Hello there, and welcome to the Animation Industry Podcast again. My name is Terry, also again, and the Toronto Animated Film Festival run by Taffy asked me to design their poster and signal film this year, which I just published on my Instagram yesterday. It's featuring a mix of stop motion and 2D and even 3D, laser robots, and cute little pom-poms being eaten by those robots. So go check it out. Today I'm chatting with an art book publisher from Germany, and his name is Spirodn Giannakis. Spiri has worked in print media since 2006, but started his own freelance book publishing business in 2017. Since then, he's published nearly 24 art books featuring prominent illustrators like Yesper Eising, Alex Konstad, and Abigail Larson. He is also the chief editor of CGMA's magazine NEXUS and a creative consultant for animation events like Playgrounds or Promised Land. In our chat, Spiri shares how to find that something special that makes your work stand out, how to market your work more effectively, and the ins and outs of art book publishing, which more illustrators and animators can definitely get into. So without further ado, let's jump in. Cool. Hi, Spiri. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. Nice to meet you, Terry.
Good. Thanks for coming on the chat. You know, I'm excited to chat about everything publisher, art, illustration related, but maybe for those who, you know, are listening in and may not know who you are, can you just kind of give me an overview of what you do?
Oh yeah, I'm always dreading this question because I'm spread very thin on a large piece of bread, as a hobbit would say. It's like I'm doing a lot of things. I'm publishing art books mainly. That's my main thing. I am also an agent to some artists. I'm building community. I'm working together with people that launch events. I'm putting them together with other creative people, with sponsors. It's a lot, but essentially you could say I'm a publisher and networker.
Okay, interesting. Is this what you kind of, you know, you've pursued a creative kind of path for a while now? Is this what you intentionally got yourself into, or have you followed, you know, where opportunities have led you to get into this publishing place?
I think I would say that the whole aspect of designing and publishing books is something that I pursued when everything else is essentially collateral damage. Like when you, it started with me, like the network part started with me doing a magazine that was highlighting events around the globe for creative people. And when you do that, you can't get around meeting a lot of people and know what they do. And I have a pretty good memory when it comes to names and faces, so I would never forget anyone. Like this literally never really happened to me before. When I meet you and I talk to you and I can put your name and your face together, I will never forget you. And that's for networking. That's just great. So yeah. I was able to put a lot of people together, and then I would come back like a year later, and great stuff would happen. And it's like an addiction at some point. You just like to play matchmaker, and then you see what happens.
Okay, weird question. Does this transfer over Zoom calls as well? This you know, can't forget a face type of thing?
Yeah. That's so there's a little story. There was this girl that I met when I was just starting with school. I was 7 years old, and I met her the first time, and she had a little sister. And the sister at the time was 3 years old. And I met her again when I was about 19, and I recognized her because she was suddenly my class. And it's like when there's specific things about your face that make you special in some way, like if there's something that stands out, then I will never forget you. That's just how it is.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That's I don't know if I can say the same. I have the opposite problem where I meet people and they're like, "Hi Terry, how you been?" And I'm like, I don't know who you are.
Yeah, there was this thing that a friend, his name is Banks, he told me that a really cool way to do that, if you don't have that freakish memory of mine, is to always repeat the name of the person that just introduced themselves to you. Like you shake the hand and you're like, Terry, hi, nice to meet you, right? Okay. So if you do that, there's already an interaction, and you repeated it and you confirm it. So it's much easier for your head.
I'm going to try that next time. It makes sense to repeat the name back to the person who just introduced them. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So how did you, okay, so you started putting together this magazine on creative events around the world, which led you to meet a lot of people. And then you realized an opportunity to start turning this into a publishing business for yourself?
It actually started the other way around. So I was working for a publisher for around 8 years, and we mostly created like touristic media, and it was like books about hiking, because the area where I'm from in Germany is really popular for hikers. It's along the Rhine River and the Mosel River, and a lot of wine drinking and hiking and watching castles. Like we have a lot of them here. And I must say, I wasn't really a fan of that. I mean, it was easy work and it paid the bills, and it was just me doing this, right? But my son was born in 2012, and I hardly saw him. Like I was just working a lot, and I saw him in the morning and then late when I put him to bed. And eventually I was like, this is not working for me. And after 8 years, I quit the job and I became a freelancer. I was working towards that a couple of months earlier. And with this freelance business, I started doing graphic design jobs, like logo design and all that, from scratch, and also brochures, but mostly print, right?
Yeah.
And I had more time with my kid. In 2013 in October, I went full freelance, and I also did like illustrations for people, some of them being published. But I wasn't really a good illustrator, I must say. Like I'm saying this with a really, I'm not doing this imposter thing. Like I was really not going anywhere. It was absolutely mediocre. But it worked. It paid the bills. And the thing is that with my passion for art, I had the opportunity to meet a lot of people that also had that. And then eventually I met this guy, his name was Even Amundsen, who is a quite known illustrator and concept artist from Norway. And he made this thing where he was drawing and writing a story with a character like one day for a whole year. And I told him this has to be a book, and he was like, "Oh, I was just putting them out there for free, and I was going to make a PDF." And I was absolutely ranting. I was telling him like, "If you do that, I'm going to fucking kill you." And he was like, "All right, all right." And so we did a book in 2017, and that kind of kicked it off. I started making art books after that. It has my thing has become to do crowdfunding campaigns over Kickstarter. And it has been quite successful. Like my campaigns are usually always funded and always over the goal. And it turns out that I have a hand for picking the right artists, for making a book with them that people want to have, because I'm kind of specializing myself into making collector's editions, like books that stand out.
I'm wondering, when you created your first book based on that artist's work, how did you have an audience for it to, because publishing is very expensive in print media. So how did you justify putting it together when maybe you didn't have the biggest audience? Did you just have faith in yourself that you could sell it?
Well, it wasn't my audience, it was the artist's.
Well, like
the artist had the artist.
Okay, so you convinced this artist, like, let's put this together and sell it to your audience. Okay.
And there wasn't much convincing. Like, of course, it sounded like a gun to his head, but of course, it for him it sounded like a good idea. And then the rest of the books from Even Amundsen were 3 overall, and these were essentially just done over pre-order, right?
Yeah.
Like they were just pre-ordering over a store. And I partnered up with a publisher called Edition Corrette. I met Jean-Christophe Corrette at an event called Trojan Horse Was a Unicorn, which is a quite known event for concept artists, illustrators, and other creative people. And I met him there, and he was like, "Well, what you do is great. I can help you do what you do better." And essentially, they took over the distribution. So what I could focus on was exactly what I loved. I could combine my job with my passion for art, keep making art books, designing them, putting them on Kickstarter, and people were going there. And by now, this thing happened where with all these artists that I worked before, people started to know me. And now when I publish an art book, it can be an artist who is not as known, and the book will still be a success, which was always my goal.
Yeah, I was interested because, using artists that are very popular already that have audiences makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I was wondering about whether you take artists who may be super talented and make beautiful work, but they don't
Yeah.
have a super big audience. So I guess that answers the question.
It's different because that's something that a lot of artists, specifically artists, no matter if in animation or concept art or illustration, they always confuse this thing about having followers, because followers don't really mean that you have buyers. There's a
Yeah.
discrepancy there. It's not like you will always have, like, I have had campaigns that performed just as well with an artist that had over 100,000 followers as one that had 10 or 15,000.
Hmm.
And that it doesn't really mean much. It just means what kind of art is it? When do you put the campaign on? Because if you do it during a time where people have to pay their taxes or something, then obviously this is not going well. And there's a huge learning curve when it comes to that. But generally speaking, it really just matters who is following you and who wants to put the money on what you're doing.
Makes sense. I never considered that there's a better time of year for a Kickstarter campaign or whatnot. Is it
Yes,
like in
yes,
the
there
middle
is.
of, is it like summer or something?
No, summer is where everybody is on vacation. Why would they
They
put
don't
it on
want to, yeah, they're
Kickstarter?
not looking at it. So maybe it's the dreary winter months before or after taxes.
Yeah, I would say the best time is usually like late spring and early
Hmm.
autumn. Like
Okay.
these times when people either, I don't know, come back from their holidays or right before they go into their holidays, right? Is a good time to start a crowdfunding campaign. Yeah.
Interesting. I think it's really cool that you kind of learn you used, your past experiences and this ability to network and your love of art and put it all together to create and design these art books that you now sell. So this is like how many do you do a year?
So this is different. Like there's not always a fixed number. I now do less because I'm heavily overworked and I just can't keep going like that. But last year, well, like this year actually, my last campaign just ended, and I had to cancel one that was supposed to come out in December. If I would have kept that, I would have made 6 campaigns, and I
Hmm.
would have put out like because I also take like freelance gigs where I'm just designing the books. Overall, it would have been like 12 books, like essentially a
Oh
book per
wow.
month, which
Oh my
is
goodness.
it next to everything else that I'm doing, it was just a lot. So I know that the sweet spot now is doing 4 campaigns every year. Yeah.
Would you ever consider turning yourself into a publishing company, like having a team and running maybe like 20 campaigns a year?
Yeah, no, so it's not that easy. So obviously if I'm doing multiple campaigns over one account, then it would have to fit the 30-day maximum, and that would mean that I can only make one every month.
I see.
Um, and also Kickstarter is actually prohibiting people to make another campaign before they launch, like before the other one is fulfilled. But they also have like the specific status that they gave to me and a couple of others, which is essentially something like a super creator, where you have a couple of more that you can do. But other than these funny details, I don't think I ever want to make a campaign every month
Yeah.
because it's too much. And the other thing is, I get this question a lot, to be honest. Like a lot of people ask me, like, don't you want to go legit and just do everything yourself? And then I'm like, well, then I can't do what I love. All right. If I have to manage people, make sure that the shipments arrive, take care of the taxes and of the business in general, right? And not work just as a freelancer, as a freelance publisher, I would say, then I wouldn't just help people to self-publish, essentially, to just do this thing and make it in the way that they want to. I would be this person that is helping me right now, right? I couldn't keep doing it in the way that I'm doing it now. So no, I don't really want to do that right now. I'm
Gotcha.
thinking about it often because it would mean full control, but it will also mean all the work.
Yeah, I'm wondering, that makes a lot of sense to me. Like it's a fine balance between finding something that you really love and continuing as long as you can to
Yeah.
do it while also trying to, grow and make money and stay relevant without, you know, pushing yourself too big where you're just handling the business side of things and then
Yeah.
you're not doing what you love anymore. Are there a lot of people that you see kind of doing this similar thing as you with art
Um,
books specifically?
so you don't get rich with art books. So this is you have to be someone who really loves this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know a single person that got rich with an art book or with art books plural. Like, I don't know anyone. Maybe Taschen, right? Like, if we go to the big ones that are doing books with Hans Rüdi Giger and about Muhammad Ali and all these photo books with Anne Leibovitz and all that, obviously, yes, of course, you can become a millionaire doing art books if you're going that direction. But if you're in most people who do art books that are not Dark Horse or Titan or Tor or Taschen are people like me. And yes, there are a few. There's John Fleskis. There's John Shindehete with Art Order. There is there are a few.
Okay.
There's also the I mean, there are the Spectrum books, right? Which are a collection, and there are old subscription models also that still are done, where people have to pay to get a chance to be in a collective art book, and then they get picked by a jury and all that. And this is all stuff that worked well before crowdfunding, but I feel like crowdfunding has made such models obsolete. Or the prestige behind it. I liked doing collective art books with people. With the last one that I made, it was just absolutely I was heavily overworked with that. I worked 3 years on it, and it was a lot.
Oh my goodness.
But it's the best book I've ever made. I'm gonna say that. Like it's really, it came out exactly how I wanted it to be, and that tells me, like, you might like doing this, right? You might do it for the right reasons and all that, but you really have to just have this thing that keeps you going with doing that, because you're not getting rich. It's not happening.
So you're consciously not getting rich.
I mean, yeah, I've gotten these questions, right? Like, couldn't you do something that makes more money on that? And I understand that. I'm crazy enough to start my own agency early next year. I'm putting things together. I want to help artists getting more jobs, and I want to represent them properly, because for people, they were like, who I told that, they were like, aren't you already doing that? It's like, no. Right now I'm not charging for that, and they're like, yeah, you should actually charge if you're good at something. Like, you should do that.
That makes a lot of sense.
And now I'm trying doing it.
Yeah, I have a bunch of questions about that too, but I want to talk a little bit about how you find artists and what makes work stand out for them to be in an art book. Like you mentioned, you're not too concerned about the amount of followers they have, but I'm assuming at some point you've developed kind of an audience that just looks forward to the next art book you're putting out that's curated with a bunch of artists. So like, what is it that you look for? You know, I know you've done some, like, 18 plus stuff, you've done fantasy stuff, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So how do you determine whether ABC artists like Terry versus like somebody who does amazing, crazy graphic work gets into your art book?
I don't know. If I tell you I just pick the artist that I like, then it's
so. Are you just scrolling through Instagram or like ArtStation or something? And
I mean, it's all of that, right? It's meeting them and finding, like, I would just rather work with someone like studios. I would rather work with someone who is maybe not as good as the other one, but they're approachable and nice.
Yeah.
Instead of working with a dick that is super talented. Right. Like, nobody wants that. So I'm always trying to find artists that also put the project first. Like I told you, my drive is not financial. I'm trying to make a book that is standing out with material and with quality, and that usually is expensive, and that means that usually there's also not much money that is left. And if an artist is trying to do this with in his mind with a motivation to make money, then we're not a good match. That's usually what I have to find out, and I have to like the work. I have to know the person at least a little, and it's not like a formula there, but I like the consistency in someone's work. Like, this is what I liked about Evan. Like, Evan did this project with doing this and creating this whole universe that he created, like a whole story building thing that he did. And I found that very exciting. and these things always draw me to them. And also, for example, I don't do fan art. I know there are a lot of people who do like art books with fan art in it, or want to work with them because it's what these artists do. It's totally fine if they want to do that. It's totally fine if they find someone who wants to publish that. I don't. I want to have something original. I like the artist for what they're doing, and
Right.
not for.
So I'm wondering, with social media and posting art, basically everybody is posting art constantly all the time, every day, like probably 1 million pieces are uploaded a day. Is there a bar that's you're looking for that to surpass that, will get your attention? Because, there's a lot of
I'm not
concept
looking
artists
at
out there
followers.
that create, not finished pieces of work, but it's like great in concept. Or there's a lot of, hyper realistic artists that will take something to the nth degree, but it's like maybe just, I don't know, a hand holding something. So like, what is it that makes something special to you that deserves to be in an art book that somebody's going to pay for?
I think that it's really important that at least there are some finished pieces, right? Like you cannot really market something that is entirely just a concept after concept after concept, or just photo bashing or something, right? Like it's not working like that. This is why illustration always works well, because usually the idea is already transferred with it, even if it's just a sketch. Then the artist tried to communicate something. Of course, you can do that also with photo bashing, but there you have the issues with it not looking like let's put it like that. If it's a photo bashed thing, right? If it's just a concept, then that's interesting for other concept artists, but not for a consumer who likes art. I'm not even starting to go in the direction of discussing AI art, or where this is taking us and all that, right? Because this is an even worse cesspool than Twitter. But in the end, it's like what I'm trying to say is that there has to be some originality with what you're doing, and then you can have a book. Like without originality, in my opinion, then you can just stay on social media.
Gotcha.
Like even a sketchbook has to have like ideas, and what makes what is the spark? Like if I could actually like put it into words, what makes it special, then it's like how like people trying for such a long time, for thousands of years, to describe what love is. And I feel like this spark that makes something special and stand out, to me personally, is just as heavy to describe. I really can't put a word.
So the last artist that you put into a book, what made their art stand out to you?
So the last artist I worked with was an artist I already made a book with, and that was Alex Konstad. And the work of Alex Konstad stands out specifically because he is very original. Like what Alex is doing, I feel like nobody else can do. It is the because he can pull off the monsters, he can also do the robots, he can also do cute stuff, like he can do everything. But his designs, to me they don't look like they are inspired by something I know. You know what I mean? Like, does this make sense?
I looked him up. I've actually seen a lot of his artwork before because of that specific, you look at it and you're just like, wow, I never thought of this. I was never going to think of this. And how did this person think of this? And then also, how did this person have this much skill to put it into, make it into art? That's crazy.
It's original. So that's what I meant.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to describe as well, when you're you just have to see it. So okay, so say I'm an artist, I'm working away, I'm trying my best, I've got a huge amount of work, I'm improving, I really want to, do something with it, turn it into an art book, get it published with somebody like you. How do I go about starting a conversation, or what is the step that I need to do to even, approach or getting published? Because there's a lot of people that just putting stuff out there on social media and hoping beyond hope that somebody just happens to stumble across them and wants to work with them, versus, taking the effort to actually put yourself out there in a written on paper way and say, hey, let's have a connection, let's build a relationship. So like, say I'm an artist right now and I want to, I know my art is good, I have the spark. How do I get to the point of working with somebody like you?
I think that most people like me are approaching the artists and they're picking them. Of course, they are also approached by others, but I don't know what makes them tick in a way that they want to work with them. Um, in the past, I have often been the one who approached the artist. By
Yeah.
now, this wasn't the case anymore. I'm booked out for the next years. It's a lot of work, but I must say, and that's why I'm mentioning this. There is always an artist where you feel like I want that one, and
Yeah.
I'm willing to shove things around.
Yeah.
And what the artists usually have when they do that is not only the guts to approach someone and say that, because that already with a lot of introverts in the community is a tough thing, but I like it when the artists weren't waiting for me. Like what is really cool is where they're like, I'm just gonna make a book myself,
Yeah.
right? Because then they know that that what they got is real, and they have a certain confidence, and I find that always really, really, I don't know, it's more approachable to me, right? So people have a lot of respect for art books and for books in general, or for sketchbooks or whatever. And I'm like, it's just a collection of glued prints. Yeah, like this is what it is, and you can make it special. You can throw a lot of money into it. You can print a book for 2,000 or for 200,000. It's not important, right? Like you can use all kinds of special materials, but if you understood that the medium that you want to be seen it is a book, then that's a plus one. So I would urge every artist to at least try it.
Makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I published a book with my own art based on my own stuff once, and it was a lot of work, but it wasn't that hard to, format things and then work with a publisher and get quotes.
Yeah.
And then set up a little online store and sell it. It wasn't that crazy after it was
But
all
it's
said and
not
done.
only that, like you for example know and already have this situation, right? Like you already figured out, so this is what has to be done, and I would have to take the next steps to get this out there and blah blah. When I talk to you about making a book with you, you already know that what I'm doing is not just bullshit. You know that it's a lot of work. You know that there is a certain amount of things, of skills or of connections that you need to pull this off. And that already will make me look different in your eyes and will make our collaboration much easier, right?
Totally.
Because
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
we have a mutual respect for the situation, right? So again, this plus one also makes what the first point that I was mentioning, right? About working with someone that is not a dick, but who just knows that this is a collaboration and this is for the product. You understood this now. You already tried.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, and it probably builds way better partnerships than first time artists who've never done it before.
Oh yeah,
Where
Alex
you're
made books
hounding
before
them for
himself.
files and they expect different things and stuff like that.
Exactly. Alex has tried this. Alex has tried making his books, and he sold them already and all that. And when he saw how these things were going and everything, then he was surprised. He understood it.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about becoming an agent for artists. So you said you're already making connections, and then somebody was like, why aren't you getting paid? And then you realize that you could get paid and you want to help artists make better deals. How do you, so where are you at right now with that? Because there's a lot of legal work in that involved as well, and paperwork and, just understanding rights and what can be asked for and all that stuff. Like I've gone through my fair share of contracts myself, and each one is crazy different.
It's so I started doing this with Evan, with the gentleman that I did the books, and we've become close friends over the years. And I recently essentially signed another artist whose name is Dominic Maya. And with him, I have this connection where I'm essentially trying to take care of his affairs, of his email and everything, keep everything away so he can keep creating.
Oh wow! So you're taking over his email and everything.
Yes, and also what I'm trying to establish is also with this agency is also to create a place where everybody who's working with me, which are like a lot of the artists that I've been publishing with in the past, are teaming up with me to create a place where they can sell prints and merchandise and all these things, right? And it's also about building like this small community, but the ultimate goal behind it is to what I was doing with my art books. What I always wanted to do is that people essentially buy a book because they trust my judgment that the art is good, because they know this guy doesn't have to have 1 million followers to be a really good artist, and maybe it's somebody you never heard of before, but because he's in a series of art books or because he worked with me or anything, then that means something. So what I like to do is to work with people who have a big name and then have others who don't but have the skills and elevate them to that level. What I don't like is rock star status. I have a huge issue with that. This is, in my opinion, a big problem in the industry, in the community, about idolizing people for more than their professionality. And someone can be a nice person, but I think at some point it's gotten just weird. It has gotten about more than just respect for the work and this kind of integrity that is necessary. And I would love to somehow make it possible that it goes, I wouldn't say even back, but I would just like to get rid of this rockstar status bullshit because it's making me fucking sick.
Okay, so with your agency, I mean, I don't know if you're ever going to get rid of that. There's always going to be tons of fans for super popular artists, blah, blah, blah. So, but with your agency, you're trying to create a space where, you know, people work with you because they trust that you, you know, you're working with amazing artists and you're trying your best to make really fair deals and whatnot. Yes. So like, do you handle, you know, their contracts and getting them new opportunities? And so what is that? What is, like, do you need to have a legal background to handle the contracts, or is this just from experience of looking at enough contracts and knowing what to ask for instance?
I should have a legal background because this is an absolute bitch. I try to read myself into, like try to understand the laws of every country that you can possibly hire an artist in. Like, I
don't even know if you can use a legal background at that point.
No, I have lawyers behind me, and I have like an accountant behind me, and I have the experience of the combined force of all these artists that work with me. And whenever there's a problem, these things can be discussed. And I'm reading a lot, and I'm trying to find people who can do this better than I, and I've found a couple. So obviously with starting something like a company, a lot of things come into play, which are new to me. I mean, I wouldn't say I've never been a team player, but I certainly have never been a boss, even though people sometimes call me that, and I find it weird. But I mean, I've managed people before, right? So I've told them before, like when you're doing this magazine, for example, then I was like, hey, you got to read that text, and maybe you have to find me something for this and that. This happened before, but actually having people that are employed under you in a company, I've never have done that. So I'm still figuring out these quirks. I'm not even sure if I should be someone who's telling people what to do about that, because I haven't done it yet.
Well, I'm sure you'll cross that path at some point. So how are you finding opportunities for these? Do you only sign illustrators? Are you going to sign, you know, anybody within kind of the space?
So I'm usually working more with 2D people than 3D people, but I'm not excluding them. And it's mostly illustrators and concept artists, because sometimes these folks do both. And that's what I've been working with the most, because obviously with the publishing business, 2D art is just something that is marketing in a space that I understand. So how do you find the opportunities? By knowing these companies that they like I've connections to all these studios, and these studios, they talk to me, and they like to find out what I think about a certain person, because again, they like to work more with a person that that is really nice to work with, and they trust my experience in that. And essentially they're like, hey, so we need someone for this and this, and I'm like, all right, you should work with this guy because he's super nice. And they're like, all right, we're gonna hire him, and that's it.
Great. And they go through you, and then you have a roster of you're building. That's amazing. I think it's very interesting that you've used your networking skills to in such an interesting way in this industry. You know, you love your love for art, and then networking just naturally plays into, you know, creating books and spaces. You're also you know, creating an artist community on, I think it's on Discord, is that right?
Yeah, but
how is that going?
I think this has been misunderstood in the past, because there are people coming there and they're like, hey, where can I post my art? And I'm like, nowhere. This is not, we're actually just talking about art books. we are really bad for each other. We are encouraging other people to buy a book that we found somewhere, and then people just spent money, and since then we were all broke. But the thing is, because there are so many other servers that have this artist let's talk, right? Like there's this I mean, Lightbox Expo is doing that, for example, and they have a lot of people there, and they do these challenges and all that, and they do all that much better. And I'm always for like, if someone got their niche and they figured out how these work, then let them do that. I will just do something different. And I'm really specializing my server about everything when it comes to print merchandise and art books. That's our
Interesting. Okay, so it's like a highly niche information sharing when it comes to art books.
It's
Okay.
it's 1,500 people. Most of them are lurkers, like it is on Discord. Most people are quiet and everything, but it's a really for me it's perfect, because these people that I've gotten to know over this time, they've become friends, and we exchange what we love, right? Like we talk about, oh, I got this book and it's great, and actually or someone sells some pieces of their collection, and then we're like, hey, I'm the buyer, right? So these things are really all about that. But I've recently started building this other thing, which is called Drink and Draw Europe, which is like a collaboration between all kinds of drink and draw clubs around Europe. For now, but I'm not really thinking that I'm going international with that. But what I try to do is build a hub for all these different drink and draw clubs, so they can, when we have these digital nomads that they're moving, know, from Prague, they want to work in Berlin or something, they will find out, oh my God, Drink and Draw Berlin, there's actually a haven for me when I arrive, and I can meet like-minded people. And then they find this out because they are on this Discord server, and yay.
That makes a lot of sense. I never thought of because when you're an artist and you move to a new country, it's very, like, there are conferences and things you can go to, but they happen like once a year, twice a year. It's very hard to meet other, artists or illustrators or animators or whatnot. So Drink and Draws, that makes a lot of sense, actually. I think that's interesting. You also do the whole conference circuit, know? Are you speaking, like, when I haven't been to a conference where you've spoken at, what is the topic you usually speak on?
So mostly it's about, with a magazine that I've made, it was the magazine that I published was called Firestarter, and this one was given out for free at participating events. I was highlighting at the end of like 25 events, I think, and I was doing panels that were essentially like these Firestarter panels, right? And I had like all these artists in the front, and they were talking about networking, and there was a panel about mental health, and there was a panel about whatever, right? Like mostly it was networking, mental health, and stuff like that. It's usually the bit of out of the box thing, that more baseline stuff than just how do we use Blender or something like that. I wouldn't go in that direction, because I find it interesting when we have a panel that you discuss about things that are interesting for everybody, and that's what I also try in my talks. But lately I've very much focused on talking about publishing.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I'm wondering, you mentioned mental health a couple of times. What are some of the highlights of, what you share on that? And I also know you ran a podcast during the pandemic on this as well.
Highlights.
Maybe highlights is a wrong word, but how do you approach the subject with artists in this space? What have you learned from that?
Full front. I think the easiest way to talk about these things is like in a conversation where you discuss things and you bring something up from yourself, then people feel more encouraged to open up themselves as well. For me, I've done a couple of these panels, right? And they were mostly hosted by different people, and these hosts were all great. And I was always sitting in the audience. And now that I don't run the magazine anymore, I'm still doing these panels, but I'm doing the hosting part. But before I did that, like when I was still in the audience, I would have seen a couple of these panels that I put together, and in one panel there was one guy who said one thing that vibed with me so much that I knew I have to get therapy. Like, if people don't talk about it, then you don't know that this is a thing. Like if let's say migraine. right? If people would just keep calling it headache, or if people would just keep it for themselves, then you would never know that this what you have is essentially something that can be diagnosed. And I feel like with mental health, it has become the same. Like, no, I grew up in Germany, and I'm a son of Greek immigrants. We don't talk about mental health at all. Like, our mental health in Greece is screaming at each other in the family, and then we just love each other again after that. And in Germany, it's even worse. In Germany, it's just like, suck it up. And the problem in this country has always been that mental health has been a topic that wasn't talked about because you were crazy if you had that, right?
Yeah.
And then when people started opening up and talking about it, I was first like, oh my God, this is a trend. Everybody's just like, oh, and this and this. And then essentially what happened was that I understood, because so many kept talking about it and more people kept talking about it that I trusted and that I respected, I was like, all right, so maybe this is not a trend, but it's just that people start talking about it now. And this is why it has become more normal. And that ever since I realized that, I don't shut up about it anymore. I tell people that I'm on medication. I tell people that I suffer depression. I tell people that trauma is a bitch, and I tell people that there's a thing as PTSD, and then you suffer and you suffer, and one way to deal with it is to open up and talk about it, and the only way to do that is full front.
Totally, yeah. I mean, I value that a lot. There's there's things I've dealt with that I've dealt with for years until I started talking about them with family members and friends that I trusted. And then suddenly an open conversation helps you see it in different light and accept it a little bit more. And even though, you know, may not go away, you release, or at least I release all this, you know, kind of pressure of just keeping it inside. That's, you know, I don't have to feel anymore. So I definitely agree with that. And
yeah,
you know,
so was it something that had influence also on your work?
Not so much my work. It was more of my daily life. You know, I've been through my own amount of trials and tribulations with my family, and you know, coming out when I was in my mid-20s, and all this, and being in a long-term relationship and all this stuff. So, you know, I'm sure it did affect my work to some degree at a subconscious level, or the things that I was creating were kind of indicative of how I felt about the world, I think. But I haven't seen a big change in the things I like creating over time, if that makes sense. I still kind of keep to the same style and the same topics. Have you noticed that you've changed? You know, I know you don't do super graphic design anymore, but what you curate and whatnot in your arts?
No, my job is very much still graphic design, and I would rather end it all before I start giving away like this thing, because I love creating the books. It's my thing. I think I've met a lot of artists in the past where the work on mental health and on work-life balance, which is affected by that, has made them a better worker too. Like, these things are just interconnected with each other. All these things are interconnected, and as soon as you figure out that you're more in balance with yourself, and if you talk about your problems, it's not just about like telling that to everybody who never asked you. Like, I'm not saying that. That's bullshit. No, don't just run around and say, I'm depressed. By the way, I'm depressed. And this is not what I'm talking about. Talk about it with people that mean something to you. And but also figure out that it's okay to talk about it, because if you would tell someone that your leg is broken, you could also talk about that, because it's just as valid. What I'm trying to say is, though, I think that working on yourself and talking about it in an industry also raises the awareness of people who employ you, that it's important that people are in balance with what they do. Maybe it also started the discussion that was more serious about studios stopping doing the crunch, right? And or not even just crunch, just like having people being overworked in general.
Totally, yeah.
All that is connected to mental health, all of it.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. You know, burnout in this industry is a huge thing. Yes. And what you just said with, you know, overworking, I feel like there was, and still there's a fear when I talk to some of my, you know, former classmates in their first job and whatnot. There's still a fear of, you know, I have to work overtime. I have to do extra just to impress my new bosses or fit in or learn or whatnot. And I think I think it's fine if you're approaching it from I'm excited to learn and I'm, this is an opportunity for me, but I don't think it's fine when you're, crunching at 10 p.m. on a Saturday just because you're afraid and you're not talking about it and nobody else is talking about it. You think it's normal. And then unfortunately, I know some older people in the industry who purport that culture because it was how it was when they were young. So it has to be, it's almost looked down on if you don't take that overtime, which is unfortunate. So I think in that case, talking about it is one step. And, in Canada, we finally have one unionized animation studio, which is great. In the States, things are different, but I think it's opening up conversations about this and talking with more people from around the world in different industries and different experiences and just becoming more knowledgeable about things, I think is great, and talking about them for sure. There are also examples of, unfortunately, I feel like there's still this stigma of like, there's people who will talk about this and be champions of it, and then they're almost looked down upon as they're always just harping about, mental health and all these things. So I think everybody needs to talk about this more. So it's not a couple people, continuously pushing that and then being seen as the bad guys.
I think we're past that. I feel like at this point we are past that, because whenever we are having these panels or these conversations, people would always say these were the highlights of the events. And I don't think that the people that run the events can ignore that. I don't, and I also think that a lot of people employing people can ignore that anymore. It has become a big topic, and I think it will only grow. And eventually, people will just realize that it's just as important as it's like a paycheck, right? Like it's gonna keep you happy, obviously, because you get rewarded. But at the same time, as an employer, you can just show that this is important to you. You want people to be fine.
Yeah, I wonder, you're just having me think about, how kind of the pandemic opened up, doors for a lot of opportunities internationally. I wonder, and a lot of studios I've talked to are taking such a hybrid approach now that they're kind of scaling up and hiring international artists and then scaling down. I wonder if the studios that, see mental health as a positive thing and a balance end up being attracting and retaining their work better, because people can move around so easily and the power is actually moving more to the artist. I mean, I would really like to see that happen too. So I think I believe
it already happens.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Spiri, we've chatted about, your publishing career, how you find artists, what artists can do to get noticed and make their own books. You've gone to conferences, you're creating an agency and mental health. Is there any subject that we didn't touch on that you wanted to share with those listening?
I don't know, my socks or something. I think we talked about everything. I think
everything.
I'm not sure. So these conversations, these mental health topics, they can go on, and about telling artists how to stay true to themselves and just keep going, and eventually something will happen, and doing the pep talk. Also, that can go on and on. I'm not sure where you see the value, because I must say I'm in this really nice position where I find everything that I'm doing relevant for myself. I'm not sure how relevant it is for other people, because I'm not living their life, but it's this thing where something has become so normal, and you feel so comfortable about it that you don't know if it is something special for other people. So if you want to ask away.
Actually, what you said is really interesting to me. You said everything you're doing right now in your life is relevant to you. I'm wondering, that sounds like a great state to be in. I'm wondering, what is your, you kind of like your personal philosophy or motivations that have ended you up in this place? Because you could have taken a lot of different paths and end up somewhere else, but to end up in a place where everything is kind of relevant to you sounds amazing. So when you make hard decisions, how do you, navigate?
I think that there are always these key moments in your life, which sounds absolutely fucking cheesy, but it's really like that.
It's true,
like,
though.
Whenever you have been in a specific tough spot, and maybe someone said something smart to you, and this just becomes this thing that you keep doing. Where a friend of mine told me, if it was easy, everybody would do it, and that just showed me that what I'm doing is, I like the challenge. I like the positive stress. I like to work not only a lot on my projects, but also on myself. And as long as I have that in mind, I believe that I can always meet these goals that I'm looking for.
So when you're faced with a decision with two paths before you, as happens many times in your life, when you're evaluating them, you think to yourself, which one is more challenging for me at a personal level that I may grow from, and that has a big influence on where you end up.
So my wife hates it when I say that, but it's just like that. I believe that I take the road that fucks me up the least. I know that I will fail if I go by that, because most of these things that I've done that have inspired me to do what I do were in spite. Someone told me I can't do it, and spite is just the best motivator out there.
You're one of those people.
If I can just shove it into someone's face and be like, "See, it worked," or even if not, then I will just I don't know, like I will run laughing into the chainsaw if it works. I don't care.
Gotcha. Makes sense. I think there's a lot of integrity behind that. That sounds really great, and it sounds like you're doing what you want to do, which I think is so rare. And I love chatting with people in this industry because there's so many of us here doing this, even if it is tough. Yeah. Well, Spiri, is there anything else you wanted to end on as we're wrapping up now?
No, I think we're good. I'm not good with final words or anything.
That's perfect. We don't need any. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was great to chat.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Yeah. Cheers.
And if you're listening and you want to, check out Spiri's art books or, see what he's up to or whatnot, you can go to his link tree, which is Spiridude, or his website, which is artbooks/news.com. And I'll include both those links in the description of this chat. And thank you so much for listening. That's all for now. Take care. Bye. The music for this podcast was composed by Will Farmer and the graphics by Daniel Abensauer. I encourage you to look them up if you enjoyed their work.